walked into our fine arts office, which is just the office where everybody kind of hangs out in the theater. And I walk in there and everybody's all like crowded around the computer and just kind of like talking really low, and there's something on the computer.
We had a lunch. We have these lunch meetings each month, and we had one in Coral Springs, which is the town next to Parkland, Florida, right where Douglas High School is. And we had about 18 different, youth leaders from the community there having lunch at this barbecue restaurant. And everybody after lunch was heading out, and people were going maybe back to church or whatever. And our group was heading to Douglas High School, our volunteers. And I got a phone message like, "Man, did you hear there's a school shutdown out at Douglas?" It's not uncommon that we would get a report like, "Hey, there's a threat or there's a scare," or whatever. Most of the time they're just threats and they don't turn out to anything.
We had a scare like this a few months prior where we were told that there was an active shooter in the building, and we were stuck in our classrooms for almost 2 hours just waiting there and getting texts, and we would hear the sirens outside and we could hear the helicopters hovering over the building.
I'm in with the theater and dance department here, and the theater people especially are very close with Stoneman Douglas through Thespians. Our district competitions are actually held at Stoneman Douglas High School, so we have a lot of close friends who go there. A lot of my friends who are in the athletics here used to actually go to Douglas, so they knew so many people there.
As a youth pastor, I was wondering if we had any of our students there that we knew, anybody that we knew. We have students in more than 70 schools around Broward County. So most schools, we have 1 or 2 kids there.
We, here in South Florida at First Priority, have a First Priority Club at Douglas High School. First Priority is an organization here in South Florida, a Christian organization that connects churches, high school and middle school students throughout South Florida at churches that go to public school campuses. When the shooting occurred, that was the same day we were having First Priority. The club hadn't started yet because it meets after school, and the shooting happened just a few minutes before school was let out.
And I texted one of my friends that I knew from elementary school, and he texted back right away, and he said, like, "I'm so scared."
As we were kind of discovering who was impacted by the shooting, one of our girls who was singing for us on Sunday morning just kind of shared with us. She said that it was one of her best friends that was killed in the shooting, and then she had 3 other friends that were killed that were just kind of close friends. And she was singing for us that Sunday morning, and we had kind of changed up the songs a little bit to be a little bit more sensitive to what kids might be going through and stuff. She said the funeral was that day, so I just felt like dropping everything and attending the funeral with her. And there were a lot of other stories like that where we were just kind of trying to change things up at a moment's notice, where we were trying just to be sensitive to our students and really try and lean into the idea that they might really be hurting, and to try and get them to process through and talk through some of their emotions and feelings.
Another thing, that we found out, obviously the next day, once the names were released and of all the victims, we found out that one of the victims in the shooting, Helena Ramsey, a junior there at Stoneman Douglas, was an active member of the First Priority Club. So that was very, obviously any loss of life was very challenging for us, but to know that somebody that was engaged and involved and active in a First Priority Club was a victim, it hit close to home.
And that really brought the mortality of themselves to the front of their minds. And so we really had to just kind of try and talk them through it, try and help them to process it. And one thing that was kind of shocking is that as we would pose these questions and talk to our kids about it, a lot of them couldn't talk about it. They didn't know how to formulate their thoughts and emotions and bring it out to process it. So that was a big thing as a youth pastor, to try and help these students process through their emotions.
So personally for me, my, way to cope / be be involved with the whole event that has just happened is through my art and my passion, which is dance and theater. We had a dance showcase at our school. The piece No One was a song by Alicia Keys. The theme of the dance was like, no matter what's going on in your life or in anyone else's life or the world, your friends and ultimately God is always going to be there for you, and he's always going to have his hand over you and comfort you. And so the dance really represented that well, because it actually wasn't intended for the Douglas shooting at first. One of our administrators, Mrs. Quinn, actually asked me if I could use that dance for our chapel at school. And so it was really cool how God worked the dance in a way that it wasn't going to be. Like, it was originally intended for this dance showcase, and he used it for something so much bigger and better to inspire and motivate people.
So a lot of our students were actually involved in the protests after the shooting. And I think that was good. That was healthy for them to process through those emotions and those feelings by standing up and saying something and feel like they can make a difference. And I think that was really, really good for them. However, on the other hand, while a lot of people want to stand up for social injustice, I think that's great. But I think it's more important that we value evangelism and the gospel and matters of eternity, as well as caring about the other people and social injustice, political injustice, and those kinds of issues that are here.
As Christians, we should be active and go out there and pray with people and love on people, and we don't necessarily have to shove the Bible in their faces or shove Christianity in their faces, but just being there and showing the love of Jesus is something that people notice.
I think for me, in all of this, my hope and prayer was that the church would not be absent, but the church would be present in this situation, so that 6 months down the road, a year down the road, people couldn't look back and go, wow, this tragedy happened, where was the church? Instead, the church has, come together and done an incredible job of serving, loving people, giving, sharing the gospel, opening their arms, and I think that's important, that people see. Because at a time that we live in, sometimes people think the church isn't relevant, the church doesn't get it, but the church has come alongside and said, listen, we love this community and we want to grieve and we want to serve and we want to give. And I think that's really important for me and first priority and the rest of our community of believers to say, we are the church and we love Jesus, but we love people and we want people to know him like we know him, and he is a compassionate, loving God that grieves with those who are grieving, and he mourns with those who are mourning, and he comforts them. And so that was the message that I've been excited to see here in our community. The church has really done a great job caring and loving for people in the name of Jesus.
This was close to home, but it's always close to home because it's in our states, it's in our country, it's in our world. No matter where you live, this is personally affecting you. You can't say that, I wasn't personally affected by it, but I still feel bad. Because if you live on planet Earth, it personally affected you because you live on the same planet that we do. You live on Earth, you live in America, you live in Florida, you live in South Florida, you live in Parkland, and these people are your people. These people are human beings.